All right, so welcome into the live stream today. We're going to be breaking down Steppen and China and how all of this might be playing into the future of crypto, what it's going to look like from a much more global perspective, especially as China starts to play its hands in a couple of areas. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into TechPath. Great to have you guys in on the live stream. We're trying to do something unique today, and that is we're dropping a couple of live streams. We've got a show coming up right after this one that is going to be talking about Cardano and Solana, which is the better buy. So make sure and stick around for that one. This is going to be a good one as well. So make sure and smash the like button and subscribe. If you're new to the channel right now, this is the number one thing you can do is jump in here and subscribe. It's going to get you notifications when we do our live stream just like this, all that good stuff. Let's get into it with what's happening with Steppen, because we just had their CEO and co-founder on our show, Metaverse Insider, just this week, and had a lot happening with Steppen. If you've been following it, we added it to the CPI, the Crypto Power Index, so we rank it on an ongoing basis throughout the week, where we drop 3 different data points on it. But the story here, Steppen to block mainland China's users to comply with regulatory policies. This, of course, is because China is actually putting the pressure onto Steppen. And in a move to comply with the Chinese regulatory policies, they're going to be blocking the users based in China on the mobile app. And it's going to get a little bit interesting, I think, when we kind of play this out, because there's some things within, I think within what's happening in China that really plays into kind of where the future of blockchain is. And I'll kind of show you guys a little bit about this, how this applies, why maybe the strategy of what China is up to, and how this could play out even into things like Bitcoin and many of the other major projects. Move to earn, Steppen hit hard by China ban. We'll talk about the hit on Steppen's price, and then also its sentiment. But it announced, of course, it's going to cut access. This is going to start July 15th. Users playing from IP addresses there in China will be cut. And of course, Steppen's price has fallen 20%. And again, this goes back into, I think, where China is looking at data. And this is something that we've been following for quite some time. In fact, we reported on it early last year when China was in the process with Didi, and I'll explain all that here in a bit. But there's a lot of Chinese stocks and a lot of Chinese companies that are, I think, in a position right now. I don't know if China is in a position, we're doing some research on this right now, of trying to recoil away from the US dollar and the whole ecosystem of the United States reserve currency, or if they're trying to secretly build on blockchain and control what's happening, because there's some indicators that kind of lean in on both those particular areas. In this tweet right here from Steppen, translated, we remain committed to providing a better experience. We apologize for the inconvenience. Thank you for your understanding. And of course, not a good thing for it. Here's what my observation is that when you look at China and the way they want to, I won't say control the population, but they definitely want to monitor. And data is a big part of that. And any app or service that has the ability to really track individual users, like Steppen, because of its GPS connectivity and the potential for it to get into user data. It's one of the reasons that Didi, which is the ride-sharing app that was really kind of clamped down on, again, because of data and the user data that was being collected by Didi. I think this kind of leans in a lot on where Steppen was going. Now, can Steppen get a reprieve from China? I think the only way they get a reprieve is if they play ball with China. If they go in and play ball with China in the sense of whether it's the open back door, or there's other aspects of certain data restrictions or things within the regulatory requirements that China is putting on many of these apps. A lot of that, I think, is going to really kind of point in this direction. Now, don't forget that China also just put this ban on mining just last year. So not so great how China failed miserably to ban Bitcoin mining. And then there's been a lot of scenarios around that. China's Bitcoin mining hash rate obviously is back up. We think a lot of this is still coming from kind of the underground community. And I think to a certain extent, you're going to have those kinds of applications out there. But when it comes to the retail consumer or the average citizen in China, and the ability to get into these mass market apps like Steppen, that's where I think China steps in and really starts to put a little bit of pressure on a lot of these kind of components and to where the future of going. On the mining side, sure, on the front, yes, they can control a lot of what's happened out there. But even so, most of the miners that, and this we kind of anticipate, we talked about this last year, is that eventually these guys are just going to figure out a way around this. And obviously most of them, many of them have gone underground with a continued move here. And of course, Bitcoin miners play cat and mouse as miners find means to stay off the government radar and dodge crackdowns. I think this is going to be a continued scenario that happens all the time within the whole ecosystem of the People's Republic of China. So I think that's the kind of scenario that we're faced with right now. The question is, how does this affect Bitcoin? How does this affect cryptocurrency and blockchain as a whole? And I think that's the bigger picture that is really going to kind of start to move not only the future of where the digital yuan is going, but how the digital yuan becomes part of a global economy and what that global economy might look like. Because there's a lot of pressures from both East and West really kind of playing in on this. And again, remember, China is still, and I do believe, still a considerable threat to the U.S. in terms of economic power. And the likelihood, if you've not watched Ray Dalio's video on this, he kind of breaks down the future of China, the growth in which that it's accelerating, obviously how digital monetary systems will start to play into this, and really kind of that the United States is most likely going to fall behind when it comes to overall economic power. And with that being the case, if that is true, and we see so many indicators that are pointing in that direction, what is the reason that they keep going after crypto? And again, this is a good example. The report, US 43 million digital yuan trading volume in debut month. And again, this gets back to the point of they are absolutely leaning in on where digital currency is going to be going. So it's roughly the size of Austria with a population of 32 million, about 1.1 million digital yuan wallets. This is where they tested it, have been opened in Chongqing, with the number of wallets for individuals reaching over 1 million and the number of corporate wallets for business transactions reaching 42,000. So, and this, again, this is, to me, a much bigger test than many people are giving it credit for, because once that they've isolated this and can show that it works both on B2B, on the consumer aspect side of things, this is when they start rolling it out. And believe me, when you get that kind of rollout into China, we're talking about 1 billion people out there, and over 1 billion, I think 1.3 billion. And that kind of adoption, even at just 20 to 30%, we're talking about the size of the United States, the entire United States. So this is a very important scenario, but the average digital yuan or ECNY transaction was 182 yuan, which is enough to purchase at least 4 Big Mac meals. That tells me that they're using it for a lot of everyday things, which is another big factor that I think plays into this. Digital yuan pilot city, Jinhua, recently reported its performance where the average transaction was not enough to purchase a single Big Mac on this particular case. And then Chongqing and Jinhua joined China's central bank, which is their CBDC pilots, on April 4th, now being trialed in 23 cities since just since October 2020. So big move in this place. Now, can we fend this off? Is there enough move in cryptocurrency and blockchain to kind of create some sort of defense against what's happening in China? Overall, Arweave is attracting more Chinese content creators in a fight against censorship. Personally, when I look at, and I've studied China for a couple of decades, in how they respond to Western threats, how they respond to the overall economic pressures, how they've done, and what we used to do when I was developing software in Asia quite a bit. That was one of the biggest things, is just the protection measurements that you had to do to protect against China stealing your tech secrets. And that was a real thing in the birth of the internet. Obviously, we saw that all the way really up to the past maybe 5 years. Now, China's actually just doing it better. So they've actually ramped up their abilities from a technology standpoint, a data and information society standpoint, and just a modern economy that has really started to move in. So I don't think that efforts from, even though it's a good effort from our wave, I don't necessarily think this is going to be something that we'll see a super huge success. Great, on the front side of this, but China is just too powerful within its own community and how it's kind of structuring its society to really make this happen. If you go inside China's effort to create a blockchain it control, and remember, this was last year, and we reported on this about 8 or 9 months ago, and China's blockchain service network can support dApps built on 15 different networks. We had a lot of chains that have already talked about working with China, and their effort has been real. So what's happened in a year? That's kind of the bigger picture here. And when you look at it right here, this kind of breaks it down. So now you're talking about a year later. This is May 15th. China's been quietly building a blockchain platform. Here's what we know. This was in a speech just here in 2019 saying blockchain was an important breakthrough. So they clearly understood it and that it was going to happen. Since then, they've quietly been building the platform that aims to facilitate deployment of blockchain tech for enterprises, which I think is very important. And it's called blockchain-based. This is BSN. This is exactly what we reported on in some of our, just search our videos, China, and we'll talk about blockchain service network quite a bit in some of those videos to break it down for you and what it is and what it means kind of to the future. But the fact that they're moving in this direction to create a blockchain that they can control, that's where companies and projects like STEPN get caught in the wake. And until those companies respond like the likes of Alibaba or even Didi and many others, I mean, you could also go into the Chinese car makers, you've got to be able to play ball with these guys. And that's kind of the biggest issue because of the economic power that they have placed upon the world, that it's pretty much putting people very similar, company leaders, very similar to what it was like to deal with the United States in the 1970s. Is that you had to play ball with the United States because of the world reserve currency and the power of the U.S. And that's how the power of the U.S. became such a global power over the last 30 years, is because of that kind of whole move. And that's, again, exactly what Dalio is talking about, is that we are on the effort now. And you should really watch that. It's a very interesting kind of mini documentary. Check it out on YouTube. First, they get into this, it's of how they're going to do it. It's going to, kind of the whole decentralization, the whole model is really just patterned off of what we know and understand around traditional blockchain. And what they're going to use it for has a lot of indications, and I think people leaning in that there are going to be some custom applications within it from a data and a security standpoint, both from whether it's medical ID, social ID is going to be a big part of that because it's already a big thing within China and how that kind of rolls out. But they think the technology is so powerful, it's going to change the entire internet. Almost all the IT system architecture, CEO of Red Date Technology, this was, of course, saying, we believe it just like we do. If you're watching our channel, you understand the evolution of Web3. Here's the big difference, is that I'm not sure. Now, when China kicked out the miners, I kind of thought, well, wait a minute, maybe the United States is going to get a chance to catch up here. I think they've been running kind of in submarine mode for the last 2 years, since 2019, really, and 2020, and developing an architecture which could be spinning out something into a scenario where they start to really negotiate with a lot of these new aged blockchain companies that are starting to develop. So STEPN could be one of those that has to start playing ball in the very near future. Now, with that happening, the next question is, how does the U.S. defend against that? What is going to potentially happen here? So here you have it, a draft bill to ban China's digital yuan from U.S. app stores. So this in itself is an economic front collision that is going to start occurring, I think, within the next couple of years, to where we see the digital yuan and the U.S. dollar go head to head, especially if we get to a digital U.S. dollar, a true digital U.S. dollar, going head to head, especially as we start to see some of these platforms develop. And especially as we see blockchain products like Steppen and many others start to really flow out into these networks and app ecosystems. So 3 Republicans, this is Tom Cotton, Mike Braun, Marco Rubio right out of Florida here, introduced a bill on Wednesday aiming to limit to the China's central bank digital currency, the CBDC, in the United States. This bill is referred to as the Defending Americans of Authoritain Digital Currencies Act and proposes to prohibit the use of China's digital currency payment system, ECNY, on U.S. app stores. So this would be, of course, Apple, Google, the likes of that. So this is going to be interesting as it plays out. Make sure, guys, don't forget, hit the like button. We love to get your feedback. It also helps us really understand kind of the content that you like seeing here on the network. And drop your questions in over on the side because we'd love to get your feedback. Do you think that China is really in a race right now to get to blockchain supremacy? Or do you feel like they're just playing kind of cat and mouse with many of these apps like Steppen and others that are so driven on data that they want to get access to their data? I'm just kind of curious if you think it's a bigger play or if it's really just about a matter of controlling the data and where it might go. Now, if this is successful, if this bill is successful, the question will be is how does China respond to that? Because there's already been speculation by many global analysts, economic analysts, that have looked at China and watched how the U.S. has done sanctions. And, we've done some sanctions here recently with Russia that have put some pressures on it. And in fact, it's kind of created a question mark for China as to whether or not they should be stepping away from the U.S. dollar because of those kind of sanctions in the essence of that the U.S. could potentially play in that field and do the same thing. So I think we're entering into a different kind of, boxing match here because I think it's no longer about trade. Now I think it's about global control of the number one technology that will innovate in the next decade, blockchain and Web3, and 2, digital currencies and how those integrate across boundaries and across countries, especially as you get into trade. Because if China starts to develop a platform in which it can, 1, lure in blockchain companies for data access, distribution into 1 billion users, and have the capacity of integrating some sort of digital currency to do international trade with across a lot of countries. So many things that this could play into. And of course, Bitcoin could play into this. So it's going to be a big one for sure. Now, let's go into, I want to take a look quickly at the Steppen Sentiment because this is right here. We just pulled the new sentiment data. This isn't got the Friday drop yet. That's going to drop in about an hour. But we do know the numbers, and obviously it's fallen off dramatically. And if you look at the Steppen pricing point, this is the last day. Here's kind of the fall off right here, which happened right there on the 25th, late that night when the word started coming in on the China ban. And of course, the drop. Now it has recovered a little bit, about 50% of that recovery. So it's back up to $1.10 from where it had fallen at $1.37. So not a massive hit for at least the short term, but if you are long-terming on Steppen right now, this is the decline that we've seen traditionally because of market pressures, and it had been holding somewhat steady overall. And if you look back at our own data, market pressures pushing down and then kind of holding steady right here. Even though AMP and sentiment was starting to really get nice with this, had this not happened, Steppen was actually in for a very interesting run here. I think we would have seen some movement on them. Right now, I think it's going to be a situation where it does have to recover a little bit. This is our CPI data. So this is something that if you guys want to get to it, you can, of course, sign up right there at paulbaronnetwork.com and takes you right into the power index. Just click that button right there and you can get into these. It's pretty inexpensive and it's easy. We drop a lot of data, do videos, all kinds of cool stuff over there. Let's get over to some questions for you guys on this and where this might play into this mock. More pain, doesn't matter, DCA, DCA. So yeah, I think, we are going to continue to see a little bit more pain in the market. We are already starting to see Bitcoin fall a little bit. Again, we're getting ready to into a holiday weekend, so I think there's going to be some scenarios. Be cautious on the weekend if you are trading. So just be on the watch out for that one. This is us. The us is done. I like it. Chris P. just bought into Steppen last week. Perfect timing. Yeah, well, I don't know. I think you might be okay if you're looking at long term, because again, most of that, if you bought last week, most of that had already been deflated. If you look back at the chart right here, I mean, there's the month. If you bought it last week, you bought it hopefully after that slide on the, after the 12th, and you were in pretty good position. So right now, it's just a little bit of a dip. I think they're going to recover from this because I think that just has so much potential overall. But again, Steppen is one of those very interesting platforms that you just have to keep an eye on because you never know. This is one of those that could easily go to zero in a bear market. The key here will be adoption. And if you watch our interview, I talked to their CEO about that a lot, is that adoption needed to be opened up. I still don't like the whole aspect of people having to hold your hand to get into the app itself through, codes and the process. And I understand their theory and their model, the network effect, how it works, but for critical mass adoption, I think you got to be able to accelerate. All right, Rajan, Paul, does this affect Polygon, and why does it keep going down? Polygon is an interesting scenario. Right now, I think Polygon is being adjusted based on a couple of things that we're watching, not necessarily FUD, but I think in the essence of some rebalancing of wallets. And then also the other aspect that is falling into this is that we're seeing a lot of people that, especially from retail traders, Polygon's an interesting one because of the retail traders are a little bit more prevalent in Polygon. So any kind of news or any kind of, lay breaking, kind of this is going to pump the token, those kind of things. And Polygon has always been one of those that's a little bit slower. They have to be able to really ramp up. And this is one thing I always talk about here on the channel, is they have to be able to ramp up their communication. And that's out to the community, because they have so many good things going, but a lot of times people don't really understand to what level that means and what kind of impact that can have overall on the entire system in terms of Polygon. So this one is still a good one. I think Polygon is a good buy though right now. Lock on 360, the West allows free market and competition. China doesn't. They want to run their own Steppen, and probably so. I would agree with that, but here's the scenario, and this goes back to the Dalio, video. He really kind of breaks it down in a simple format, and that is that the technology adoption, the economic infrastructure, and if you look at kind of just understanding the ecosystem within China, the potential there for growth is massive, and the opportunity there, especially as you lean into the next wave of major technology adoption, and we all know what that is. It's blockchain and Web3. So they're peaking at a time in which we're going to see this massive uptick in tech adoption, new innovation, new use cases, all those kind of things. Who is at the top of their game when that happens? Who's at the table when that happens? China is at the table right now. If you look back in the really late 2000 or late 1990s and early 2000s, the United States was at that table, the head of the table. We pretty much controlled most of the GDP out there from a global perspective. We were by far, I think, unthreatened in any way, and we were right there on the birth of the internet, and we seized that opportunity. And I think that's really, contributed to the United States being such a global power, is the fact that our tech and the evolution of the internet really occurred right here in the United States. So big one. Thanks for the super chat. Did you see Marshall Hayner? The Proton. This is back to Proton. Okay. He would be happy to come on the show if he invited on Twitter yesterday. We've had a couple of guys that we have brought onto the show because of our community. And we do it all the time in essence of outreaches to the community. If we like the project or we have at least some interest in asking questions around that project, we'll usually reach out on Twitter, either on my Twitter account, which is just @Paul Barron, or on the show itself, which is Paul Barron TV. Hunter, China is manipulating the market. Again, I don't know that they're manipulating. I think they are directing the markets and looking at trying to essentially kind of make moves within how they're going to grow the market from an aspect of adoption when it comes to blockchain and where that potentially could lead. Chris P, at least Steppen can be scooped up for a discount. A little bit of one, not much. I think because it dipped and then came back a little bit. So even though it was already down, so I think you were already in a good position if you were buying Steppen at that time. Again, Steppen I've bought and I've sold, so I trade in and out of some of these kind of tokens. This is one of those that does definitely before. When will we see CZ on the show? Man, we'd love to have CZ on the show to really kind of talk about Binance Smart Chain, because I think there's a big future with where Binance Smart Chain is going and kind of the innovations I think that we've seen Binance really get into, and the regulatory setup too that I think they're going into is big, meaning Binance. Remember, BNB has been in pretty good condition over a little bit of this rocky road, and I continue to see BNB as and it's one of the tokens we track on an ongoing basis. Let's jump over quick to a poll over here. Let's see here. How damaging is China's fight with crypto and the crypto markets? Doesn't matter anymore. Okay. Very damaging, needs to end. I'm actually, guys, I'm leaning more into what we don't know. And that is a concern of mine. You can't put a country as powerful as China in the dark and just assume that the rest of the world is going to, develop around it. They have to. It's like the United States. If the United States is dictating something, the rest of the world will develop around it. And there's only one other country that I think has that kind of power, and that is China. It's not Russia. There's nothing happening in Europe that would dictate that kind of adoption range and the potential because of China's lock-in. When you think about where China is going with, their evolution of kind of just in general, how economic powers within many countries, Belt and Road, we've talked about this on the show before. If you don't know about that one, research Belt and Road and kind of the countries that are involved in that, because it's an economic infrastructure being developed. And believe me, cryptocurrency will play a role in a lot of these kinds of things in the future. All right, guys, we're going to get over to, don't forget, we're going to do another live stream here in about an hour. I think we're going to come back on with Cardano and Solana on a head-to-head. We've got some new data, a lot of new insights on the direction. I think it might surprise you the direction we're going to be leaning, both on short-term and maybe on long-term, because there's two powerhouses here that are going head-to-head. So make sure and stick around or be ready for that upcoming live stream. And again, if you guys are not subscribed to the channel, this is the time to do it. Hit the subscribe button. If you're still around here after the live, make sure and hit the subscribe, because this way you'll get notifications when we're doing the live streams. If you want to reach me, it's out on Twitter @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechBat.